There are two basic Gemaras that discuss the concept of Geirut, where we learn basically all the din when we have a Geirut. One is a Gemara in Yevamot, which is based on Psukim and Rut. We call the Masora Rut, when she returned back together with Naomi, she didn't just return with Naomi, she converted. And the whole discussion that takes place between Rut and Naomi on their return journey is a discussion of Naomi deciding whether to accept Rut as a Gioret. Right? She says, wherever you go, I'll go, right? When she said those statements, that was basically Rut declaring her full intention to convert, and Naomi accepts her, and she eventually, assumingly, she goes back to Klal Yisrael and she converts there. But from that discussion between Rut and Naomi, we learn about how to accept and when to accept Gerim. And the Gemara in the Yevamos inserts into that discussion very technical points. Naomi says to her, if you come to become Jewish, there's an issue of Tchum Shabbat. You can't walk beyond a certain limit outside the city limits on Shabbos. Where you walk, I'll walk. I'll keep that. And there's an issue of Yichud, says Naomi. She says, you sleep, I'll sleep. She says, we have 613 mitzvahs, so Ruth says, Amechami, fine, I'll keep them. There's an issue of Avodas Kochavim, so she says, Elokayach Elokai. In other words, Ruth was full on to accept all the mitzvahs, all the significance of becoming Jewish. So that's one Gemara. There's another Gemara in Kritot. In Kritot, Daf Tet, the Gemara understands that not when do we accept not when do we accept converts, but what do the convert need to do in order to become Jewish? And there, the Gemara says the template for that is Mamad Har Sinai. Whatever we find happened at Mamad Har Sinai, that's what a convert needs to do throughout the generations. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Omer, Kachem, it's talking about, it says, Gerim Kachem, Kavotechem, Ma'avotechem, Lo Nichnesu LeBrit, El B'mila, V'Tvila, V'Atzat Adam. 3 things needed to happen at Har Sinai for the Brit to work there, which was we all did Brit Mila, before we left Sinai, we did Tvila, and there was a korban. So to 4 generations, 3 things are necessary for a convert in order to become Jewish. He needs to do, if he's male, for the Brit Mila, he needs to do Tevila, and there's a korban. The Gemara later on has another drush that says korban is only ma'akev time of the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore we're only left with 2 Bizman Hazeh, which is basically Brit Mila and Tevila. I want to understand exactly what does it mean to convert. What actually is going on? What happens when a person converts? What changes? And what exactly is the person doing when they enter into becoming Jewish? So there's a few questions I want to ask. The first is a kasha from the Ritva. Gemara in Ksubas has a whole sugya in the Gemara Daf Yud Aleph, which discusses a ger katan, a child who's not yet reached the age of bar mitzvah, who we want to convert, or he wants to convert. How can it be done? And the Gemara assumes it can be done. There are many, many opinions in the Rishonim about how can it be done, when can it be done, if it works, even min Torah. Tosfot there has a suggestion that it only works mid Rabbanan. Actually, it's not possible to convert children. A full discussion there. The Ritva asks a basic question. So I understand. Throughout all the discussions of the Rishonim, no one brings us obvious proof. What's the obvious proof? Well, we learn Geirut from Mamad Har Sinai. At Mamad Har Sinai stood millions of children. However many of you work it out, there was probably about 1 million children, or at least hundreds of thousands of children, who were all part of the entering into the Brit at Har Sinai. So why can't I prove from the fact that no one ever suggested that children at Har Sinai weren't part of the Brit? So why don't we just bring a proof from there that children can convert? That's the kasha of the Ritva. A second kasha is from a pasuk, which according to Chazal was also referred to the point at Mamad Har Sinai, or shortly afterwards, where the pasuk describes Yishma Moshe ta'am bochel mishpachotav, that the people were crying for their families. Why were they crying for their families? So there's a rule. Before Mamad Har Sinai, before the Torah was given, apparently it was a very normal reality that people were marrying their very close relatives. Then came along the Torah and all the mitzvot. And we were told that actually very, very close relatives, it's forbidden to be married to them. So suddenly, people who had been living together all their lives, happily married, they had to divorce, they had to separate. And that's what they were crying for. They were bochel mishpachotav. Rashi says, al iski mishpachotav shne'asur lehem kravot. All the kravot were asur, and they had to separate from their close relatives. It was a tragedy for them. They were crying. The Maral asks a basic question. He says, one second, we have a rule when relatives, close relatives, convert together. When a person converts, it's kakatan shnolad dami. They are no longer considered related to their close relations. A brother and a sister who convert, min ha-Torah, they're not considered to be related to each other, and min ha-Torah, they could marry each other. Midrabanan, for obvious reasons, it's forbidden. But basically, the idea when a person converts, all their familial relationships are suspended when it comes to the nature of the prohibitions of marrying close relatives. So, if that's true, so we know that's the halacha today. Brother and sister, a mother and a child convert, that min ha-Torah they could marry each other. So why, at the time of Matan Torah, were they crying over this fact that there had been a prohibition of marrying close relatives? If everyone had just undergone conversion, then they should all be permitted to each other. So what was the problem? A third question. Third question is, how does Matan Torah apply to us today? I didn't stand at Matan, Har Sinai. So how does the acceptance of the Brit that happened at Har Sinai apply to me today? The truth is, the answer to this is a pasuk in Parshat Nitzavim. Lo techem levadchem ani koret et habrit hazot vet halah hazot ki im et asher yeshno po imanu omed hayom lifnei Hashem Elokeinu vet asher einenu po imanu hayom. Apparently, the Brit was made not just with those who were standing at Har Sinai, but also those who will come in the future. Maybe we have this nice idea of everyone's neshama being there at Har Sinai. But what does that mean? The Gemara in Shavuot says everyone was there. All future generations were there. All future Gerim were standing there at Har Sinai. Somehow their neshamas were there. What does that mean? So there's a chiddush of the Rav points out one small thing which we can expand to explain all of these questions. The Rav points out that when the Rambam brings the description of the three things a person has to do when they convert, Brit Milah, Tevila, and bring a korban. When he describes what happened in Matan Torah, he says everyone underwent Brit Milah in Mitzrayim, and everyone underwent Tevila before Matan Torah. And the korban, he says, the korbanot described at Matan Torah, that's the korbanot of Gerut. Ve'alu olot alidei kol Yisrael hikrivum. In other words, wasn't that every individual brought their own korban. Rather, Klal Yisrael as a single entity, as a single nation, together brought a set of korbanot. There was only one set of korbanot, and it was on behalf of the whole of Klal Yisrael. In other words, Klal Yisrael, we can view ourselves often as individuals, but not only are we individuals, we're part of a single entity called the Jewish people, Am Yisrael. And what happened at Har Sinai was not many individuals converting, but what was rather the single entity called Am Yisrael converting together. And it can explain very nicely why there's such an emphasis in Matan Torah on us being united. It says, Ish echad b'leiv echad. Why was it so necessary for us to be so united at Matan Torah? Because we needed to become a single person, a single entity. In fact, in Masechet Derech Eretz says, V'chanis sham Yisrael, Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hol v'sanu Yisrael et ha'machloket, v'avu et ha'shalom, v'nasu chagiga achat, achshav etein ledem torati. The unity that Klal Yisrael achieved at Har Sinai was a essential prerequisite, the ability to give us the Torah. Why? Because the Torah was given to Klal Yisrael as a single entity. It was a national conversion, and as such, it had only been given to Klal Yisrael when we were a single entity. Now, what does that mean? When we talk about the single entity of Klal Yisrael, it doesn't just include the people who are alive right now. Am Yisrael, as a nation, includes not only the people who are alive at any given point in time, it includes all future generations will ever come along. And that's apparently the meaning of why am I chayiv in Torah today? Because I'm part of Am Yisrael. And Am Yisrael stood at Har Sinai. So since I'm part of Am Yisrael, and Am Yisrael received the Torah Har Sinai, so Mimela it applies to me as well. That's also the obvious reason why children were obligated at the Brit Har Sinai, even if a child can't convert in future generations, But at Har Sinai, the Torah was given to Am Yisrael as a single entity. And if it's talking about Am Yisrael as a single entity, that obviously includes the children as well. And also explain can also explain a little bit of what's really allow us to really appreciate what the significance of Gerus is today. If this is true, that the meaning of being in a Brit with Hashem is that Hashem made a Brit with Am Yisrael, and to be part of that Brit I have to join Am Yisrael, then the meaning of Gerus is not that the individual decides to enter into a Brit with Hashem and forms his own Brit with Hashem. The Gerus says, I want to be close to Hashem, I want to form a Brit with Hashem, and that's the meaning of his Gerus, to form that Brit with Hashem. According to what we're saying, the real meaning of Gerus is not forming a Brit with Hashem directly. The real meaning of Gerus is joining Am Yisrael. And as a person who's joined Am Yisrael, Mimela, the Brit that was formed with Am Yisrael applies to him as well. And that's why the Psukim in the Tzavim, which describe the Brit was made with the whole of Am Yisrael, people who are Yeshnopo ve'Einopo, so the Gemara said that refers to all future generations and to Gerim. Anyone who's included in Am Yisrael, the Brit of Har Sinai would have made with those people. So the meaning of Gerus then is not directly forming a Brit with Hashem. The meaning of Gerus is joining Am Yisrael, and once you're part of Am Yisrael, automatically the person becomes Chayev fully in Torah mitzvot, because Am Yisrael has a Brit with Hashem. Explains very nicely why the Gemara says in Yavamas, what if a ger were to be Gaye b'smei all levein atzmo? He got Brit Milah done, and he was Makabel Torah mitzvot, and he decided to join the Brit with Hashem, and he did Tevila. He did everything he needed to do, but he did it on his own. He didn't come to the Jewish people to do it. So apparently, it doesn't work, the Gemara says. Why doesn't it work? Because the meaning of Gerus is not doing a Brit with Hashem. The meaning of Gerus is joining in with Am Yisrael. Therefore, the person has to do it by coming to Am Yisrael, and Am Yisrael accepting. Now, if that's true, has major nafkaminas of the meaning of what do I need to do, what do I need to accept when I become a ger. There's already a machloket in the Gemara in Yavamas. A person who converts purely for the sake of ishut. He wants to get married to a non-Jewess, or a woman who wants to get married to a Jew. Does that gerus have any validity? It's a machloket in the Gemara between Rabbi Nechemia and other Tanaim in the Mishnah. Rabbi Nechemia says no. Person wants to convert, and he has no interest really in joining the Brit with Hashem. His whole interest is just to get married to a Jew, and to marry a Jew, he has to convert. That gerus has no validity at all. But the conclusion of the Gemara is there's no. But all the time disagree, and the halacha is that even a person who converts l'shem ishut, we wouldn't want to accept such a gerut, we wouldn't encourage it, but bottom line, the gerut is chal. It's a valid gerus. The question is why? If the person didn't accept Torah mitzvah, why is it valid? So first of all, it's not obvious that the Gemara means he didn't accept Torah mitzvah. Maybe he realized in order to become Jewish and marry the person he wanted to marry, he'll have to accept Torah mitzvah. But if you take the Gemara as an extreme, the Gemara seems to be saying that even a person who has no interest in accepting Torah mitzvah, as long as he converts in order to marry a Jewess or a Jew, then it's valid. Why? Because if the meaning of gerus is simply converting in order to join the Jewish people, and then once he's converted, once he's Jewish, automatically he's chayav in Torah mitzvot, then such a gerus will b'di'evet work. Rav Moshe Feinstein had an amazing chidush. He said that if, let's say, a person converted and he thought keeping Shabbos was a chumrah, it's a chumrah that some from Jews keep Shabbos. He says even in such a case, the gerus is valid. Why? Because when he converted, he understood he would become chayav in everything that Jewish people are chayav in. He just didn't realize that included Shabbos. So you have very, very extreme opinions that it's possible for a ger to convert without full knowledge of what's included in Torah mitzvot, and yet the gerus is chal, because the meaning of gerus is converting into the Jewish people. So the question really becomes, so how important is Kabbalat mitzvot? So this is an old machloket that's been controversial ever since it was first raised, and still controversial, very controversial today. You could say the fundamental machloket is whether you view gerut as joining the Brit with Hashem, or gerut as joining the Jewish people. If it's joining the Jewish people, then Kabbalat Torah mitzvot isn't so essential to the gerus process, because it happens automatically anyway. And if the meaning of gerus is joining a Brit with Hashem, then it becomes essential. But it could be everyone agrees that Gerus is joining the Jewish people. The question is, what's the essential definition of the Jewish people? If I think the essential definition of the Jewish people is a people who has a brit with Hashem, then a ger who desires to join the Jewish people but has no interest in being part of that brit with Hashem, so he didn't really join the Jewish people. He just he tried to do something that would allow him to get married, but if he's not Mekabel Torah mitzvot, then he didn't try and join the Jewish people who would be defined as a people who are connected to Hashem, and therefore the gerut wouldn't have validity. Finish off, just go back to Ruth's declaration. What did she say when she wanted to convert? Ameich ami, Elokaich Elokai. Both aspects. Should Ameich ami, your people is my people. She wanted to join the national entity. She also said Elokaich Elokai, your God is my God. She apparently appreciated that there were two parts of joining the Jewish people, and she wanted both. What's fascinating in the Gemara there is, the Gemara says, what was Ameich ami? Nomi said to her, do you know, Mafkidinin Sheish mitzvot, Yugam mitzvot, we're chayiv on 613 mitzvot? How did Ruth say, yes, I know we're chayiv on 613 mitzvot, I'm willing to accept them? Ameich ami. Your people is my people, and therefore, of course, I will keep those 613 mitzvot.